Morning. Sorry to do this in the middle while working, but it's right now 9:50 a.m. in the morning. I left out a few important akudas of my shmooze and during the siyum Masechta Shabbos. Number one is I was rushing this shmooze up anyways. I didn't want to hold anybody back from their learning. This kviyas item and the seder over there in the shul. At the same time, I want to be maxing them with the siyum and maxing them with the speech. I'll continue my speech and I'll continue to put the shir also on my YouTube. The continuation of the shmooze from Masechta Shabbos. The more about the Gemara, the speech about that I said over the Gemara on the Gemara on the body that they found whole. Another thing that makes a person disintegrate their body, according to the Zohar Kodesh, and the Zohar Kodesh and the Chaim, of course, speaks about this also. The Musas farm bring about this. That as it says in Pirkei Avos, a kinna v'taiva koved moitziin es adam ha'olam. Person has kinna and taiva and koved and moitziin es adam ha'olam, which is also the opposite of the midos of tzaddikish, sheli shalcha shacha. Because a person that has kinna always wants the other person's property, so it can't be shalcha. And not only that, if he has taiva, he can't begin that the next person should have something because he wants it. Let's say that person has a lot of money, he wants that lot of money. Or that person has a lot of property, he wants a lot of property. He has the taiva, the kinna and the taiva. And the covet, of course, that he needs that covet to show that he has it too. So the kinna taiva covet might see in this other basically, because he has the total midas of rishus that totally destroys him from the face of earth, and destroys him from the olam haba also, that his body disintegrates, and destroys him also that he shouldn't have tchias mason and live in olam haba. It's also brought down somewhere that these three things, the kinna, taiva, and a kovet, they can't sit in Gan Eden together to the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's brought down somewhere in the Gemara and Shas, and it's brought down Musas from. These things, the Rebbeinu Shalom can't forgive that person should live with him in Gan Eden, because it's a person such bad midas of kinna, taiva, kovet, that his body disintegrates. Besides, where it doesn't come off tchias mason, because he has no yashrus. He has no yashrus to be on this world. He has no yashrus to be on this world. He has no midas of shali shacha. Everything is shali. Everything is mine, because he has the taikin and taiva and kovet. And that's what also is kinna maybe l'day sinna maybe l'day lashon hara. It comes to accuse the object or the person totally to rishus. Why? Because he has kinna on that person, and then maybe the sinna maybe l'day lashon hara brings a churban in the world also, brings a destruction to the world, because he can't stand that person has something and he wants it too, so that person becomes an object of hate, or that object comes of a hate because he can't have it. Instead of praising everything and praising every person and saying shvach of a person, saying the shvach of the olam, he comes to a sin of the world. Everything comes a hate to him. Everything just comes a total hate. Kinna maybe l'day sinna, maybe l'day lashon hara. And he starts speaking bad about that object or about that person because he can't have it, or he can't get it, or whatever it is. That thing is a terrible thing. Instead of saying shvach of that thing should be for the enemy and the person. It should be for that person. And again, the story. Before I say the story, I'll say another inyan of kinna, which is also masriach as adam and olam haba, which makes a person to disintegrate. Is the koil hanacha shel kinna. The koil hanacha shel kinna, which the Zohar Kodesh speaks about, and the Chavetz Chaim says, which is terrible lashon hara, is to say a person has a lot of money, because that makes people to have kinna of him, and that makes an ayin hara on him, on his panasa, and to say that he has a lot of property, or to say that person opens his wallet, and you see he has a whole pile, stack of hundreds, because he's ready to pay someone. He says, "Oh, look how much money you have." So that koil hanachash is saying, by saying, "Oh, look how much money you have," makes the ayin hara, and it's maybe kina, and it's maybe that person should lose his possessions also. And then not only that, if it's terrible for that person, that person's a great person, and he finally has so much money, and you say such a thing on that person, eventually you get nenished, because it says, so by that pasuk taich up of that pasuk of those two pasukim in the Seres Dibris, basically, if you nichshel someone for kina, that people should be jealous of him, Havda Fadolis is going to be, the kina is going to go to you, and you'll lose whatever you're supposed to get, because you may be kina on that person. You may be kina and sinna. By bringing that koila nachash of kina, you're bringing kina for that person, just like Chava and the nachash. They had kina in the Rebbeinu Shalom. Why do you have kina in the Rebbeinu Shalom? What did the nachash say? Look, you want to see what's raw and toiv. You're not going to know, because if you don't eat from the apple, you won't be like the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom is smarter than you. That was the kina, the koila nachash of the kina. That to bring nachava, to have kina of the Rebbeinu Shalom. So that's why they were punished right away, and they were chased out of Gan Eden. And as we see, just like other Mechav were chased out of Gan Eden, every person gets chased out of Gan Eden for having kina. If they have kina whatsoever, even if they enter the koil and nachash of kina by saying something like that to a person, or to say, "Look how this person gave him such a cheap price, and he took care of him so well, so people should take advantage of him." People should have kina to want to take advantage of that person and get a cheap price in that person also. That's also kina, koil nachash of kina, which maybe brings a person a lot of trouble, brings the person a lot of tzar. And that punishment also causes a person's body to be masriach, the koil nachash of kina. Like, there's a story, koil nachash of kina basically is masriach, a person's body, which basically puts him to get destroyed and from the face of earth, and not only from the face of earth, from the face of Gan Eden, and from the face of Chias as well. So his body doesn't stay intact, just like the Gemara said at that time, that was staying whole because he had no kina. And if you say someone who has a lot of money, or he has a job, and all of a sudden you ask him how much did he make, and this and that, there's also the koil nachash shel shekina, to find out if a person had made a lot of money from a certain job, and that's the koil nachash shel shekina also. Let's say a person charged a person $400 on a job, or $850 on a job, or $2,000 on a job, and you hear that he charged $2,000 on a job. That's the koil nachash shel shekina, that people should be jealous to look after the job and take it away from him for a cheaper price, and still, so he should lose, and that person should lose. That's the koil nachash shel shekina also, which a person eventually loses his olam haba and his moitzias adam and olam as well, and moitzias adam mit chias mesim. So the koil nachash shel shekina is a terrible thing also. By saying afterwards that a person has a lot of money, or a person has a lot of property, or by saying just to bring any koil for kina for anybody. The koil is also oil shemayim, and the Yetzer Hara is mekana. And the Yetzer Hara is the Baal Kanafayim that goes around and says to people and makes people dream about this guy's pranos and this guy's things, and make people to want to be jealous of him. So this is also Matzia and Sa'adim and Oilam, Matzia and Sa'adim Mitchias and Mason, Matzia and Sa'adim and Gan Eden. Just like Chava and Adam were kicked out of Gan Eden because they had the koil nachash from the kina of the Rebbeinu Shalom. If that's so to every person that's jealous of the next person, depends how big that person also is, how fast the reaction will be for his punishment compared to how big that person is. So that's also the koil nachash shel kina. I'll say over a story from that happened to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and his Rebbetzin. His Rebbetzin once walked out to the neighbor, and the neighbor asked her, "How do you make a kugel?" So he said, I grind it on a hand blender, and I grind it, I put the eggs and this and that. So she tells her, "Look at this, I have an easy way. I have a blender, blends the potatoes and this and that, and it makes the potatoes grind so fast and you don't have to work so hard. So she said, oh, that's a good idea. So she went back to her husband, Reb Chaim, and said, you know something, our neighbor has something very special, which is very good for me to also use to a blender, which is easier to peel to grind the potatoes Erev Shabbos, and it's much better. So Reb Chaim said, oy vey, chas v'shalom, you had kin on your neighbor. I don't want you going out anymore to your neighbors to see what they have. Chas v'shalom, you shouldn't be mikana, because if you make me to have mikana, chas v'shalom, they'll be nichshol. So what did Reb Chaim do? Reb Chaim says, you know what? Go buy yourself a blender, and buy your friend also another blender, just in case hers breaks, because we're Isaac and Kina on her property. So Kitzah Maisa, what happened was, that's what the Rebbe said. She bought her friend another present. She's saying that thank you so much for the gift you gave me. I'm giving you another one, just in case yours break. So Kitzah Maisa. So she bought herself one also, and a few weeks later, actually, her neighbor comes to her and visits her and says, thank you so much for bringing me the blender, but you know something, my blender broke, and I had to use your blender, but you know something, my blender had a better taste for some reason, had that original taste, and now I feel so uncomfortable using a newer blender. It's so much different. So she told us over to Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim said, oy vey, look what we did. We caused chas v'shalom our kina that her blender should break. So you know what? Go buy her another blender. She should have just in case this one doesn't work, and this one should save her. So Kitzah Maisa, that's what she did. The Rebbe brought her saying, you know what? Here's another blender. I want you to have another blender. What was this midah of Reb Chaim? So that to always look out to give for that person, and not to have kina chas v'shalom, to be misakim for the kina that they had, is being jealous of that blender. It was to be mekayim shalisha, that they shouldn't have chas v'shalom to come to kina, which is a terrible thing. The kina taiva kovid metzias adam me'olam. The kina, maybe they sin, maybe they lashon hara. It's a terrible thing. So a person should always work and always saying, I want you to have money. I want you to have money. When he sees someone has a lot of money in his house, he said, thank you, Baruch Hashem, you have a lot of money. You should have a lot of money always in your life. You should bench your kif like a flying. And that person should answer back, oh man, you too, you should have kif like a flying also. Instead of having kina saying, oh, look how much money you have in your wallet, or look how much money you're making for this person. That's the kina, that's the koil nachash, which is also makes a person's body rot on the oilam emes, which makes the person eventually not being zoichet to roit chias mesim, which is also mitzias adam and oilam. And eventually, sometimes people get nichshel because of this. Let's say they're waiting for a check in the mail, and they're waiting for certain money to come in. Because they cause someone to have kinas shekol nachash of their money, eventually they get delayed on their money and their things, and their panasa gets cut because they're nichshel the next person of kina kol nachash, and they get punished even on this world for it. So Abba Yisrael should help us. We should all get rid of the inyan of kina whatsoever. And we should be always looking into of saying shalisha shachah, and always give people brachas when they see someone has a lot of money. Says Baruch Hashem, he has a lot of money. Not only that, he should have kif like a flying. Even if you hear it, and you just say that the person should have a lot of property. He has a lot of property. You say that his property should grow further, and I shouldn't have any kidney. And not only that, I want my property eventually also to be part of his. That if I can help him make any more property, I would love to help him even. Or make any more panasa, any more calls in the business, I should want to help him also. That's the shalisha shachah. That's the midah of not having kina whatsoever, which helps a person eventually to live on this world, which is not mitzias adam me'olam, which is also helps a person be in Gan Eden, and it helps a person also to be in Oilam HaEmes, in Gan Eden, and eventually be rising for Tchias HaMesim. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I didn't say this over. I left this out by the Siyum. But this was part of my shir, my shmooze, and I left it out because I didn't want to hold back. Number one, I didn't want to hold back anybody from their learning. Number two is, this is a very important part to also know what the Kol HaNachash Al-Kina could do. And what the Kol HaNachash was, the Kol HaNachash from Chava and Adam, and against the Rabbeinu Shalom, which already chased them out of Gan Eden. So have the Alphadolis, Any person that has kol nachash kina on the next person, like asking a person after how much he made on a job, just to hear the kol nachash, because the kol goes up to Shemaim. A person should always keep confidential all his work. That he makes money, he shouldn't say to other people, so chas v'shalom, the kol nachash kina shouldn't be rising on him. And that's the way to stay away from kina, which is away from being nichshol people. So away from being nichshol people from the Olam Emes. Kol tov, my dear brothers, hatzlacha rabba. And again, I'd like to share mazel tov for my siyum Mesechta Shabbos, and I'm already holding a few blat erevin. Baruch Hashem, not to be rising kina on you, but even kina seifrim is aser, as we brought down kina seifrim. And I'll be jealous of a person, the kina seifrim, because if you're jealous of a person's kina seifrim and his learning, you have to be jealous of everything of that person, as well. And if you're jealous of a person's property, a person's money, you have to be jealous of all his situations. So let's say if a person needs a lot of money and you're jealous of him, and what if he's living on the street, and eventually you'll end up living on the street also? Because it says you're jealous of anything that he has, and he finally made a lot of money, and you're jealous of him, you'll end up living on the street because you were jealous of him. And this is chas v'shalom what a person doesn't want. Even though he's jealous of the good things, but if he has to be jealous, he has to be jealous of everything. So eventually, if the guy in the street made a lot of money, you're jealous of him, and he made a lot of money, so you'll end up on the street also, chas v'shalom, and living on the street, and then you'll suffer and struggle. All this person's tsar until you win that money. So don't put yourself in a situation of chas v'shalom or kina, which is terrible, because kina eventually is one of the worst things. It has a major punishment. Like I said yesterday, Bahesiem. Eve was Mekana Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? What there was certain Nevi'im Mekana Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara brings down. What they were Mekana? The Mekana Moshe Rabbeinu has Yotze v'Nechnas, and the Kachi Kachim always speaking to the Rebbeinu Shalom whenever they want. And they said, how come we're Nevi'im also, and the Rebbeinu Shalom speaks to us also, and we can't go in and out in the Beis Mikdash? So what happened was Eve got a lot of sufferings, and other Nevi'im got different sufferings. Bilam, who was Mekana, was the Nereg B'Charev. All these Nevi'im that spoke against Moshe Rabbeinu and their kina eventually suffered terrible. So we have to always get rid of the meat of kina and always look to be kaim of the mitzvah shali shalcha shacha and chas v'shom, to be over of like the Rasha that says shali shali shalcha shali, and they always look into people's bank accounts to see what they have and to see how to read them shidduchim, things like that, because that what they have in the bank account. Chas v'shom, that's the skin. This is aser. This is our masik v'oreyu. And chas v'shalom is like to look at a person's bank account to see what he has, and that's what this Rasha, the Rishonim do. A person of Midas Rishus does that, because he says always shali shali shalcha shali, and that's the Midas of a Rasha, and that's what we have to rid of ourselves of. Chas v'shalom, always to praise the next person. We hear a person that has a lot of money, say Baruch Hashem, he has a lot of money. Not only that, he should have a lot of money, he should have kifel kaflayim, and even my money should even help him make more money. That's what a person should say, and that's what he's kind of the mitzvah of shali shacha of a midas tzaddik, of a midas chassid. Kol tov, my dear brothers, have a great, wonderful day. Kol tov, sei gesund.